pleased to bring you our feature presentation.
Live from Joe's mom's basement, it's the Stacking Benjamin Show. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug, and look at my calendar. It's Game of Thrones creator George R.R. Martin's birthday. To celebrate, Joe's mom wanted to go all out, so we've turned the basement into a throne room. And just in time, because we do have some royalty coming on the show today, let's welcome the host of the Personal Finance Show, Beau Humphreys. And from Your Richest Life, certified financial planner, Katie Brewer. And finally, we welcome Kit Harington. Oh my God, no. I'm just kidding. It's only our own Winter is Coming dude, OG. Speaking of winter is coming, maybe we'll kill someone off today. I suggest we start with OG. Anyway, today we're meeting our neighbors, and it turns out Joe's neighbor is a guy who's an executive VP in the mortgage industry. Here to talk Mortgages 101, we welcome Joel Gurman. Of course, we'll have our trivia contest. Oh, that's a great idea. Kill the loser. And answer a Magnify money call for help. And now, here's a character nobody said would make it past the halfway point of season 1 of podcasting. Joe Saul, say hi.
And I did. I continue to be the guy that nobody expects to live, and I live on. By the way, lots to talk about killing today, Doug. I don't know what that's all about. Hey, everybody, welcome to the Game of Thrones podcast. No, probably Stacking Benjamin's podcast. I am Joe Saul, say hi, Average Joe Money on Twitter. And across the card table from me, the guy, I don't know if he watched Game of Thrones or not. It's Mr. OG. Do you watch Game of Thrones?
No.
But it's your kind of thing, like dragons and fantasy, and it's kind of like you.
How many explosions?
Lots of explosions. Lots of dragons breathing fire on people.
That seems make-believe.
None of that. None of that.
Yeah. No. No. Nope.
And joining us from the Personal Finance Podcast, a show that, by the way, our friend Tom Drake, who was here just a couple of weeks ago, when he and I were recently talking, we were talking about favorite shows. He was telling me the Personal Finance Show is his favorite podcast. And this is a great one. From north of the border, that's the U.S.-Canadian border, it's our good friend Beau Humphreys. How are you, man?
I'm doing all right. When you told me that before about Tom, I was surprised. I mean, he's been on the show.
Yes.
And it's very nice of him to say that. But yeah, I'm doing good.
Well, he likes the discussions that you have because you have very cool, unscripted, just let's see what comes out of this discussions, which are fascinating.
Well, you and I believe, talked about ways to breed corn.
We did.
Very random, but that's because it was one of your first jobs.
That was one of we talked about early jobs, early money mistakes. And even though, because you do that, your discussions of people are all over the place. Tell people a little bit about the Personal Finance Show.
Yeah. So it's not about topics. It's about people. We start with your earliest money memory, and then we go from there. And wherever your money trajectory went, that's where we go, because everybody has a different personal finance story, right? And so you're going to be talking about, like you, all the mistakes that you made, Joe. That was a lot of stuff.
You don't have to start laughing when you talk about what I did with my money.
All those mistakes you made.
So many people can learn, though, from listening to that, right? Like, don't get a credit card when you don't have a job, that kind of thing.
That's a good lesson, life lesson. Yeah, you're welcome, people. And by the way, you don't even have to speak Canadian to listen. Like you guys do this same thing.
There's a button you press that translates it to whatever country, American for you, and it just takes out all the A's and changes a boot to about, and that kind of stuff. Whatever you need.
It's unbelievable. It's fantastic. And we'll link to it on our show notes page. And somebody else who's back, I think, Beau, she's been here like 743 times on the show. From Your Richest Life Planning, it's our good friend, Katie Brewer.
Hello. Thanks for having me on for the 7:44th.
Isn't it about
time?
Is it about? I think it's about. Yes. Oh, nice.
Do we sound Canadian yet?
Yes. Beau's like swing and a miss. Yes. So, but you are a certified financial planner in the Dallas area. So tell everybody about the practice.
It's going really good. We're creeping up on open enrollment time. So that's a little bit of what I'm talking to clients about, with making sure that we don't skip those opportunities, and just kind of trudging on with the year.
Yeah, it's an exciting time. You guys down there in Texas, Katie, it's like, 110 degrees. How are the cornfields doing, or any of the fields doing?
You know what? I'm going to go check on the cornfields next time I'm out and about. I have not been paying attention. Shame on me.
Well, you don't have to, because the people at Acre Trader do that professionally. Big thanks to Acre Trader. It was so bad.
Nice. How are the cornfields?
What breed of corn?
Oh, boy. Thanks to Acre Trader for supporting Stacky Benjamins. For more information about how to become a farmland investor through Acre Trader, visit acretrader.com/SB. We'll talk about them a little bit later in the show, but they have a good explainer video that will tell you all about it. acretrader.com/SB. We got a great show. We got OG sitting right across from me. We got Beau Humphreys here from the Personal Finance Show. We got Katie Brewer from Your Richest Life Planning. What could be better? So let's get into it.
Hello, darlings. And now it's time for your favorite part of the show, our Stacking Benjamin's headlines.
Our headline today comes to us from the 4-Pillar Freedom blog. I had never been to Zach. Here is the guy's name. I've never been to Zach's blog. Any of you guys been to Zach's blog before? No.
I think I might follow that on Twitter.
Okay. Well, I like this piece, How to Gain a Better Understanding of the Things That Bring You Joy, Zach writes. Zach says, in my mind, there are 2 ways you can enhance your quality of life. Spend less time doing things you don't like, and 2, spend more time doing the things you do like. Many people are drawn toward the idea of financial independence, early retirement, because it gives you the means to spend less time doing things you don't like and more time doing the things you do like. He says it's obvious that FIRE, as people call it, can help you do less of the things you don't like. Namely, if you don't like your day job and financial independence, retire early gives you the means to quit, then certainly you no longer have to commute to and from work 5 days per week, spend a huge chunk of your waking hours doing work you may or may not find meaningful, and then spend most of the day being away from your significant other and or family. It's easy to identify the things you don't like, and FIRE gives you the means to remove those things from your life. It's interesting, though, and I want to stop right there. Katie, do you think a lot about that, about getting rid of the things in your life that you don't like to do? I mean, is that why you work for yourself?
You know, I'm in the Dallas area. And so whenever I did commute to work, it took at least an hour, because I was kind of going from the suburbs into the main part of Dallas. And it was something that did make me miserable twice a day.
Yeah.
So I will say that part of me wanting to create my own firm was because of the pace of life. And I wanted to be able to spend more time with family and less time shaking my fists at other drivers on the highways.
How much of it was about money, though? I mean, because it seems like when you stop doing that where you work for somebody else and you go to work for yourself, you got to worry about money, though.
Oh, yeah. I'm just totally broke now.
Right? Nice. Come visit my financial planning office. It's a great sales pitch.
No, I mean, I think it's always about balancing out what you want in life. And for some people, they would do anything to make a whole lot of money. So especially if somebody comes right out of college and is in finance, they might move to New York. They might work for a big private bank. And maybe they do that for their whole life. But a lot of times I see that people are really excited to do that. And then when they get their head more around how they want to live life, sometimes the dollars just don't make it worth it.
Beau, you also work for yourself, right?
Yeah. I mean, I do now. And that was a choice I made 2 years ago. My wife got into med school, and I took the opportunity to move with her to the city we're in now, and just went out on my own. I had money saved up, though.
Nice.
And yeah. But a long time ago, decided to choose joy whenever I could, because I went through a horrible gambling addiction and went through that whole process and went through what you would call Chapter 13 bankruptcy. In Canada, it's something different. But, I was down and then I went back up because I was doing a bunch of things I didn't like. So the life is too short, when you lose a bunch of years to an addiction.
But, and I want to ask you about that. I thought of you about this when I was thinking about this piece, not about the gambling addiction, but about you and I had discussions kind of like on your podcast, kind of like the discussion that Zach is having here about doing things that you like and avoiding things you don't like. But I'm betting at the time, because it was an addiction, that gambling probably felt like the thing you liked, right? Or or was that not the case?
It's really interesting in reflection, right? To think about did I really like it at the time? It's something that a lot of addicts probably think about. It was something that I needed to do to be able to cope with a regular life. That's what a lot of addictions are. And it was the thing that I liked that provided me an escape. So yeah, I did like it at the time, but after a while you realize, oh, this is not worth it. Whatever's happening to me is not worth it. And it took some pretty big incidents for me to clue into that. But hey, it's all good now. So,
but it also sounds like, too, what you're inferring is other areas of your life you feel like were not going the way you wanted to. So gambling was an escape from that. Like cleaning up the rest of your life and getting away from those things was helpful.
Yeah. So, when I did, we'll just say bankruptcy, when I did file, that gave me the break that I needed to explore what was wrong with me. Why am I doing this? Why am I gambling? And I had attention deficit disorder I didn't know. And for a lot of people that manifests as fear. For me, it did manifest that way. I was afraid to do anything. So once I found out, I got medication for that and my life changed. I didn't need coping anymore. I wasn't afraid anymore. Now, of course, behavioral therapy too, mindfulness, meditation. And today I do transcendental meditation. That kind of keeps me grounded. It tells me what I actually want, and I don't waste my time on things that I don't want to do.
I want to continue with this piece. Zach writes, it's easy to identify the things you don't like, and FIRE gives you the means to remove those things from your life, being financially independent. However, as odd as it may sound, it can be trickier to identify the things that you do like. If you've been living in the fog of work for too long, you probably become used to the daily routine of commuting to work, spending most of the day at the office, commuting home, spending the rest of the evening either running errands, doing household chores, or watching Netflix. This is what I saw, OG, when I was a financial planner, and tell me if this is the same for you, is that I see people that know what they don't like, and it's working, and then they retire, and all of a sudden they start to age, they get restless. It isn't any better.
Well, especially with the early retirement, because there's so many people in your cohorts that aren't actually retired at that point. So who are the people that are retired if you decide to retire when you're 40 instead of 60? Who are the people that you're going to see at the grocery store? And who are the people that you're going to see at the golf course or, at the bookstore or whatever? They're going to be other retired people on Tuesday at noon. And most of those retired people are not 40 or 30 or 25 or whatever. So you got to be real cognizant of that, as well as what you're going to fill your day doing. I know, Katie, you hear it all the time too. People say, oh, when I retire, I'm going to golf. You go, that's great. Have you ever done it every day for a week before? I mean, seriously, like golfing is, it takes, especially, if you don't do it all the time, you get, you're sore. Ask the guys who are pros who do it. They're all world-class athletes. And they still need weeks off at a time to not do that stuff. You say, well, yeah, I'm in shape. I can golf every day. Awesome. What are you going to do at noon? Because you golf at 8 a.m, you're done at noon. Now what? It can't just be that one thing. It has to be, a whole lifestyle change or a whole lifestyle that you're exploring at the same time, I think. And not just, I can't wait to not go to work anymore. It's like, but then I have to do something else.
Well, and I know, Katie, what you guys worry about in financial planning is longevity, right? So to OG's point, not just golfing for a week, but can you golf for 40, 50 years?
Yeah. We got to make sure that somebody can golf for 40 or 50 years if they want to golf for 40 or 50 years.
Yeah, but there's no way somebody wants to golf 7 days a week, 40 or 50 years.
That doesn't tend to be my client. Maybe I'm fishing in the wrong pools here.
Yeah. But does your client have trouble thinking about what they really want?
It's kind of funny. I actually have a lot of clients who do a lot of thinking and a lot of planning, and usually kind of a lot of tracking to make sure that they're not always putting off what they want. So I don't know if this is just a matter of who I work with. I work with a lot of Gen X and some Gen Y people, but I feel like a lot of time they're not just reacting to what's happening. They have a really good balance usually of like financial independence later, but also kind of living in the moment right now.
But is that before you? Did they come to you that way, or did you help them through that?
I find some people are just naturally more stressed about money. And with those people, if they can get to a point where they're not worrying all the time about it, it kind of frees them up to be able to live their life better. I've also got some people that just come in and are already pretty confident about money, but then they kind of get somebody else to check over everything, and they feel like they're able to actually give themselves permission to
Yeah, kind of relax a little bit instead of just being on pins and needles if they had the third party there. Yeah, right. But I would guess this idea of finding out what really does make you happy based on the story you just told has to be something you've spent a lot of time on.
Absolutely. There's I went to see a career counselor, actually, and there's these tests for what are your core values, right? One of my core values was freedom, but also helping others. Like, money is there, but money's just it's usually a little bit lower on the list. So most people, I think, not all of their, say, top 10 core values are being met in their job, but enough of them are being met so that they stay. But they could use a little more introspection to find out, could I be doing something a little bit different? And would it make me happier or more full of joy?
How do you find the middle ground, though? Because, Beau, you and I both know people who have these things that they love, that they want to do, that fill them full of joy. There's no way they can spend as much time as they want to doing that, or they try to do that, and ahead of time, you're like, yeah, that's not going to pay the bills. There's no way that's going to work. And then sooner or later, they find it out for themselves. Like, how did you find that middle ground where you could do what you love, but still be able to pay the bills and put some money away?
Well, specifically, my example is I've been able to survive for 2 years on very little actual income, but money saved up. You could say I just worked double hard before I took this break to pay for a break for myself. And I think that's totally valid, right? Because it was on top of I saved a bunch of money by the time I was 35 after I paid everything off. So my retirement accounts are fine, but I had saved cash that I was like, you know what? I could quit my job and live for a year, maybe 2. And I was able to stretch it to 2 because I made some money. So I think you can use some of the money you saved up to give it a try. I think you should need to give it a try. And then, whatever happens, if you got to go back to work after that, I've found something that I want to do, and I'm going to be an insolvency counselor helping people who went through bankruptcy. That's what I'm heading towards in the fall. And I feel really good about that. Even though I'm going back to a 9-to-5-ish type thing, that's fine with me because I've had my time to think about it and I don't feel forced into it, right? Or to stay.
Yeah.
I think that's important.
Katie, in the change from what you do now, which I'm assuming is doing what you really like, from before what you didn't like, what were the key things you didn't like that you had to remove to get to be able to do more time doing what you love?
I think it was just kind of a factor of who wealth management firms usually end up working with. And a lot of times it's folks that are really close to retirement or already in retirement. And by the way, I'm not trying to be ageist here. But at the same time, when I was working for those firms, I was in my 20s and I really didn't have anything in common with the clients.
Yeah.
And a lot of times they wanted me to keep proving myself. And they'd be like, why should I listen to you? You're the same age as my kid, yada, yada. So I feel like by going to work for myself, the biggest change was me being able to kind of pick and choose who I wanted to work with, and just making that switch to working with people that are more or less within 10 to 15 years of how old I am. It really made a really big difference in both us connecting and being in the same stage of life, but also my enjoyment with actually doing what I'm doing.
Use the phrase, people want you to have to prove yourself because you're the age of their kids. Now you're at the same stage of life roughly that they are, and you can then be more of a role model.
Right, exactly. So it's kind of like I'm like their health coach. I'm sort of their financial planner and kind of their fitness coach to a degree, but I'm more like a peer-to-peer type relationship versus a expert that a firm hired and then shoved in front of a client and told them that they have to listen to.
This guy, Zach OG, he talks about, the financial independence, retire early. In Detroit, you and I hosted the Scott Rickens and the Playing with Fire movie. During that movie, he and his spouse, Scott and his spouse, Taylor, they sit down and they make this list of things that make them happy. And they realize a lot of the things about their lifestyle aren't things that make them happy. And Zach at the bottom of this piece talks about things that make him happy: playing piano, keyboard, going hiking, swimming, drawing. Is this the type of thing that you have clients do? I mean, how do you get people to focus on those things that make them happy instead of just constantly, I got to get out of here because it's not what I want to do?
Well, I think that it really just boils down to conversations and making sure that as you work with that goal, whatever it is, whether it's financial independence or any other financial goal, that the appropriate whys are behind that. So yeah, you can retire early, but then what? What's on the other side of that? Or people who want to talk about in their estate plan, charitable giving or something like that. You just want to have the appropriate conversations around why that's important to them, particularly. Happiness, as he's talking about it here, it comes in a lot of different forms and fashions. It's material things or doing physical things or whatever the case may be, but it also could be something like, you notice that clients tend to give a ton of money to church every year, and that's great. Well, that can be a discussion point for a future conversation around, is there an opportunity to leverage that or leverage your giving into the future beyond just, what you're doing on an annual basis or something like that. So kind of expanding on that, I think, helps.
The big takeaway from this for you, Beau?
Yeah, that you should actually pause and maybe look at your life every so often. A lot of people are just on autopilot, right? Got to go to work, got to go home. Like you said, Netflix, and then you get up in the morning and do the same thing.
And also, even when it comes to money, I think a lot of people, even listening to this show, who examine that are on autopilot, because it feels like there's a portion of our audience, just based on the questions we get sometimes, which are just about, how do I get more, better, faster? And they're not even examining if more, better, faster is worth it.
Or is what they want.
Yeah, right.
Or is this just what everyone else is saying? Is that what the ad told you? What do you want? And it's a hard question. People don't explore it unless they have to. I was in an unfortunate circumstance where I was basically forced to, but not everyone. It's a curse and a blessing, right?
Sure.
You get to know yourself, but you have to go through this horrible thing. I don't wish it on anyone, but it can, it could really be valuable. I kind of want everyone to have something happen when they're young so that they can learn.
Hey, Katie, your takeaway, anything, Dad?
I think part of the article was great about talking about reflecting on what you actually do like that could be a smaller thing that might be able to be tweaked. So, for example, if you really like being able to spend time with family, I know in our family, I'm married to an engineer and I'm a financial planner. So sometimes we have zero creativity when it comes to planning anything.
But the zero creativity
is correctly. That's for sure.
But I love our little routines. Like every Friday we have pizza and we do a movie. God forbid I ever try to do anything other than that, because it'll be a complete uproar in our household. But at the same time, I'm exhausted on Friday. So it's good that we're not trying to force ourselves to go out to eat or, to go meet up with a bunch of friends. So it works for us. And it's just one of those little things that we're able to say, okay, well, this is what makes us happy. It kind of cracked me up because articles like, oh, you go on autopilot, you're watching Netflix and sitting at home. And I'm like, that's what I like doing.
But you've examined it. I love that.
Yes. You made the choice.
Yes.
I've examined that I'm a complete homebody on Fridays.
Oh, gee, how about you?
I think my favorite part of it was when he talked about the food, like how he liked Chipotle and coffee. Those are my favorite parts because I like both of those too.
Man, do we have a treat for you today. Normally, this is where we do the Friday Fintech segment where we shine a spotlight on a financial company doing something cool. And an area that has not been cool, though, for a long time has been mortgages. And just the other day, I found out that Joel Gurman, who's Executive Vice President of Web Banking Center over at Quicken Loans, is my neighbor. This is part of the fun of moving from a small town like Texarkana, Texas to Detroit, Michigan, is that some people who are doing a lot of the moving in the mortgage space living right around the corner from me. So I'm talking to Joel and I said, hey, you've got to come down to the basement and jump on the microphone and let's talk mortgages for a while. We haven't done this in a long time. So I'm really excited that he's been upstairs talking to Mom, Joel Gurman from Quicken Loans, coming down to the basement. Andy just sat down. We're so happy to have him here from Quicken Loans. It's our new friend, Joel Gurman. How are you, man?
I'm so happy to be a first-timer in the basement here.
I know. You got the mom experience upstairs.
I did.
Now you get the microphone down here.
It's surreal. It really, truly is.
It is surreal for us to have you here, man. Well, because I know you guys are all about process and a lot of people are frustrated with mortgages. But before that, while we have you here, we've heard a lot lately about interest rates going down, the Federal Reserve lowering interest rates, might do it again. Who knows?
Sure.
But what does that have to do with mortgages?
Well, I think there is a certain misconception about that because when you look at today's world, you've got the Federal Reserve saying one thing and they're bringing rates down, and you've got essentially the markets showing a little something different. And what that ultimately means is you're going to live through some volatility. And that's what we've seen. We've seen the stock market drop 600 points in a day. We've seen it rebound. When you talk about interest rates and the impact that the Fed has in that, a lot of that's typically baked in. They're already talking about an additional, adjustment in September, et cetera, or throughout the end of the year. That's really baked in. What you see affect interest rates more often than not are the anomalies. So, for example, a few weeks back, you had President Trump talk about the tariffs and then not the tariffs. And that moved interest rates a little bit more because, again, those are the things that the market can't really account for in advance. But when the Fed starts talking and doing their Fed speak, the ball is in motion in terms of interest rates at that point.
Well, my understanding is you guys also, you guys,
Sure.
You mortgage people, you guys are based on a whole different set of things like T-bills or treasuries instead of the Fed. So there's not even a direct correlation there, is there?
Yeah. If you want to track interest rates, the thing that's probably going to get you closest to it is the 10-year treasury and the movement on that. The 10-year treasury, essentially people would move into the bond market because the stock market's a little bit too volatile, and vice versa. They move into the stock market because it's a good investment, and they move out of the bond market, and those have the ebbs and flows in terms of rates on a regular basis. But what we see a lot of the time is it's not the Fed that's moving that stuff. It's these other factors.
It's still this other news.
Yeah, it really is. And, the Fed made their adjustment, their most recent adjustment, and it really didn't do anything to pricing on that specific day. But you see the president say, hey, we're going to apply tariffs, and then we're not going to apply tariffs till December. And that had massive fluctuation in the markets.
I have heard that when it comes to mortgage rates, it's really very hard to predict where rates are going tomorrow. Would you say that's true?
I would. Listen, the old mortgage guy adage is if I knew where rates were going to go tomorrow, I would be, a very, very, very wealthy man. So I would agree with you. It's very difficult to put a thumb on exactly.
It's like us with the stock market. Yeah.
Yeah. If you've got any tips that are surefire, I'd love to stack some Benjamins myself. So
I would not be working in my mom's basement, Joel.
Understood.
If I knew that.
Understood.
When it comes to mortgage rates, I can go to Bankrate, I can go to LendingTree, I can go to all these different places, and I see these comparisons, right? I can go to here in Detroit, we can go to the Detroit Free Press, and on page 7 of the business section, it'll show all these rates. I've heard that before referred to as everybody's best lie. Is that true?
I think that in today's world, there's a lot that goes into calculating an interest rate for somebody. So, for example, credit quality plays a role in that. Loan size plays a role in that. Investment versus non-investment. If you're talking about a purchase, how much you're putting down, the PMI factors, all of these numbers go into it. Really, truly, the best way to understand is get on the phone and talk to somebody about your specific situation. Now, there will come a point, and we're getting there, and the technology is improving, where all those questions can be answered, but it's really, really difficult to get a true answer. I could put a plug in here, but our technology at Rocket Mortgage will take you down those paths and ask you the right questions or really get you into the right program and narrow down a rate for you. But very often you will find that the rates on paper, there's some small print down there based on, again, those factors that maybe aren't taken into consideration. And it does become more of a marketing rate. But if you ask a few of the right questions and you dig in a little bit, you'll get to the right place.
Asking interest rates, though, isn't the only question that I need to ask. I think there's probably questions about what fees am I going to be charged?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you were looking at a $100,000 loan, for example, and you wanted a 0% interest rate, I could do that for you. It would just cost you $100,000 to get it in theory, right? So everything is relative. I think that you're asking the right question because there are more pieces to the puzzle here. Someone's interest rate is going to be tied to things like maybe their PMI factors, if they're putting money down, if they're not. So you want to understand exactly what your payment's going to be, because that's the bigger deal here. At the end of the day, there are products where maybe you have a lower interest rate, but you have a higher PMI factor, so your end payment ends up higher, things of that nature. There are other programs where the PMI is so low that having a higher interest rate to get there is a better situation for you. Again, it's about going a little bit deeper to your specific situation. And whenever you're ready to move out of the basement, we can certainly dig in and ask those right questions to get you there.
2 words, dude: free rent.
I've said it a million times. I'm not fortunate enough to live in my mom's basement, but I truly have said it. I would move back if I could.
If you could, yes.
She'd take me too. So.
Yeah, but would your family be happy with that?
That's the problem. That's the holdup right now. I'm working on it.
They really love grandma though.
They do on Sunday nights. That's right. For dinner. But I don't know about, every day and the house coat and, stuff like that. Who knows? I
want to talk about innovation. We got a few minutes left. Yep. Innovation in mortgages. I know that you guys have been pushing that for a long time. There's a lot of pain points in the mortgage business. How are you guys working to solve those pain points?
Yeah, listen, we all know that the world is going in a certain direction, and that is speed, automation, technology involvement. And there are certain parts of the business that aren't there yet, but there are others that are really getting there. And a great example of that would be from the income standpoint, because I'm guessing you do a lot of your work, via your bank. You're making automated payments. Who knows? Maybe the vast fortune of money that's coming from this podcast is being deposited directly, and you can track that through things like that. Technology now is able to, or the technology we're at least using is able to see that information. So you don't have to provide pay stubs anymore in a lot of cases, or tax returns. You can provide us access to certain accounts and we can see all that information. And
much faster.
Much easier for you. Error rates are lower, accuracy of transaction. If you tell me, hey, I make X a month, okay, that's great. Then I've got to verify that and everything. But if we go right online and we verify and pull up your information and I can implement that into the technology right away, there's no questions. It's all done right there. And whether it's the income piece of things or if it's the assets, if you're buying a home, that certainty up front takes a lot of the pressure off of whether it's a refinance or a purchase. And that's what this is all about. It's about, helping people make good decisions, whether it's refinancing and putting your world in a better place and getting cash out. And we're in a position right now where we keep saying, hey, we call it the era of abundance, but it's been going on now for darn close to 12 years.
Yeah, right.
Really.
Right.
Or if it's, again, buying a home, like these are big decisions to make, but we want to make them as simple as possible. And leveraging some of that technology has really been helping there.
Industry-wide, are you seeing the big fintech push help with that? Like, are they pushing your guys' buttons and other bigger companies' buttons to make sure that you're still on the cutting edge?
It's not so much the big companies that are doing it. I think it's the smaller companies that are innovating. And we've always said...
Well, that's what I'm talking about. These little fintech companies coming that are pushing everybody's button.
Yeah, for sure. Sometimes it's a blessing not to have, in our case, 30 plus years of experience, or, these other massive banks, 100 years of experience. They come in with a concept and an idea, and they're really leveraging a lot of the same things that I'm talking about. The technology that we use right now to verify income and verify asset and do it right at point of contact initially, that's probably the future of this business, and simplifying certain things. Whether there'll come a point where appraisals aren't necessary. That will happen. It happens in certain situations right now, but simplifying the process. I don't know when your mom bought this place, but her process back in the day was probably fairly antiquated. It involved an inch or two of paperwork and things of that nature. We got a long way to go, but it has come a long way. And I think everything you've seen in this industry over the past, let's call it 10 years, and some of the regulation that's gone on, you're going to see continue more and more quality of process and speed of process. And that's something we've always been committed to. We're in the era of abundance. The business has never been better right now because of where interest rates are. And yet our process allows us to continue to do what we're doing rapidly. We're getting loans closed in 30 days where, years and years and years
30
ago.
30 days.
You bet. And years and years and years ago, it took a lot longer.
Yeah,
than that.
Right.
And we weren't doing as much. So the process is really the difference. And the experience of the client is the difference as well.
You mentioned regulation. I know that things have changed a ton since, the 2007, 2008. I don't even want to ask you about which desk you were hiding under during that time frame.
I don't remember.
You've blocked it out.
Absolutely. No, it was a challenging time for sure.
Yeah. But regulation, the mortgage industry, my understanding is it's a lot tighter. Where do you see that headed in the future?
That's a good question. I don't know. Where we're at right now, the process has allowed for the right level of regulation, meaning that you have to have a certain expectation as a business of doing the right things. Fortunately, I can say that we've always been a part of that. We weren't wrapped up in a lot of this stuff. The products that got a lot of people in trouble weren't products that we dealt with. We didn't do those loans. But I think that you're probably going to, everything is cyclical. So if you go back to 2007, 2008, what was the norm back then has gone away in terms of, let's call it, no documentation and things of that nature. I think you're probably seeing things open up in different places. I don't think it'll ever get back to a place where you can get a loan without being qualified, certainly, because I think there were lenders that were doing that. And we saw that. But I think that you're going to get to a place where the process has simplified itself and we can do it a lot easier in terms of, like I said, using the machine learning techniques that we have, leveraging some of the technology from an asset or an income standpoint. I think you're seeing Fannie and Freddie understand that things like appraisals, it's all data, right?
Yeah.
Everything that we're moving to a place where the data rules. And if we have that data, there's no need to have certain levels of regulation in place, because if the data is dependable and the data is true, there's a lot we can learn from the processes that we already have in place.
Yeah, that's a good point. You can write a mortgage that makes you guys happy, and at the same time, it's successful. I mean, actually, what makes you guys happy is if it's successful for the homeowner too. They stay in the house, they stay there. Yep. You're happy, everybody's happy.
That's right, 100%.
Yeah. My last question is another question for a guy who has been in the field for a while. It used to be back when I was practicing a decade ago that finding a good mortgage broker who knew the process, could kind of shepherd your stuff through it, was incredibly important. But we're sitting here across this card table talking about machine learning, data-driven, process-driven. How important is that person still in the process?
Well, I think they're still very important in the process. The technology is only as good as the person who is asking the questions to get the information into that technology, or is good enough to explain them, make sure that you are fully aware of how the process works, right? I always used to say my favorite clients when I was a banker were the ones that asked the most questions, that frankly were the hardest upfront to deal with, because once they got to this place where I was able to give them the information that they needed, they were my most loyal clients. And
that's funny because, not to stop you, Joel, but those were, when I was a financial planner, those are my favorite clients too.
That's right.
The ones that wanted to know under the hood, how does this work? Because inevitably, if something went wrong, they knew where in the process things were wrong, and it was their strategy, not mine.
Yeah. And again, those are the most loyal clients. That's where I got built my business off of. And I think that the same thing applies. It's just a matter of implementing not only their data, we talk about their data, but the data that we have that we can provide them, educating them on what matters, right? And how, if it's a refinance, how a refinance benefits them, and walk through the math and make sure that they understand it. The technology is going to help in a big way there, and the data will always help. But I think we're still in a place where you need to talk to somebody. There will always be a certain percentage of people that need that human interaction. What we're seeing is that is decreasing, but I certainly don't see a time where there will never be that human interaction. We like to say that machines are good at certain things, right? Addition, subtraction, calculations, things of that nature. But when it comes to educating and communicating and so forth, you still need a human being, to do that. So I think that the role of that broker is still one that's very, very, very engaged in the process.
And I'm hoping, speaking of that, I think strategy is huge when it comes to the human interaction. We'd love to have you back again soon to talk. Maybe stackers have some mortgage strategy questions. They're dealing with some stuff. Maybe you could come back and answer a few of those. Absolutely. If your mom will have me, I'm happy to. I'm happy to come back anytime into the basement here. I don't know if you like coming back for this or the cookies. I'm not sure. Hey, who says no to cookies? Thanks for hanging out. Absolutely.
Hey, trivia nerds. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug, and in the spirit of Game of Thrones creator George R.R. Martin's birthday, thought we should kill off a character. Oh, I've been waiting for this for years. Well, since Joe's mom said we can't do that, even though OG's really not been great lately, and I can't say I've loved working with him recently, I thought I'd share some Game of Thrones money trivia. Check this one out. In season 1, of Game of Thrones. Each episode had a budget of, oh my God, just a couple of bucks more than this podcast. Each episode had a budget of $6 million. We have a budget of $6. And honestly, I don't even see evidence that they're even spending $6 an episode, but I'll take Joe's word for it. But with winter coming and all, let's keep today's trivia short and sweet. How much did each episode cost HBO for season 8?
All right, we explained the convoluted rules to this podcast to our panel ahead of time. Beau is playing on behalf of Paula. OG moved into a tie with Paula for second place. Now, Paula has 7. OG has 7. Katie's playing on behalf of Len Penzo. Katie, you're leading the way with 9. So no pressure on either one of you. But because OG was the last to move into the tie, that means that you get to decide first then, Beau, on behalf of Paula. Would you like to guess first, in the middle, or last? You're not guessing what the answer is. Just do you want the first guess, middle guess, or last guess?
I feel Paul and I haven't met officially yet, but I feel like she would want to go last.
That is really strange. That is strange. And by the way, the reason Paula wants to go last, and I explained this to our panel ahead of time, but if it's your first time listening, the reason for that, we play this Price is Right style. So we're the closest without going over. So that means, OG, would you like to go in the middle or swing away first?
Middle.
In the middle, which means, Katie, you're playing on behalf of Len, and you get to guess season 8, 1 episode of Game of Thrones. How much money does that cost? Did that cost?
Well, let's see. I mean, they got to get all the costumes, and they have to get these actors that they've paid more and more and more money. Earlier in the seasons, they were at $6 million per episode. And these actors, they've got to keep them around, keep them from going to some other great show that's going to pay them hundreds of thousands of dollars per episode. So I'm going to go with $8.2 million.
$8.2 million. Some inflation there. All right.
I mean, am I supposed to go with like exact, dollar amounts with cents at the end?
That's pretty. You could go 8.2 and 1 penny.
We'll go 8.2 and 1 penny.
8.2 and 1 penny. I'm sure that's the exact budget. Judy, what do you think the budget should be? 8.2. Oh, wait. 8.2 and 1 penny. OG?
Okay. So this is a pretty popular show. And the aforementioned hiring and firing of people, dragons, getting them, filling their bellies full of fire, can't be cheap. Plus, they probably recorded it live. So
I'm sure they did.
Probably was actually more of like a time period piece that they recovered from a long time ago. So those are real people back in the 1800s or 17, whatever the hell the movie show was.
I can see you making a mental spreadsheet right now.
Yeah. So I'm going to say that it's profoundly more than that, and that 6, and we're going to go up to 19 million an episode.
$19 million. A lot of inflation on that one.
I just think it costs a lot of, once you get with dragons.
Yeah, sure.
Their agents are sons of guns.
So, Beau, what are you thinking, man?
Well, I really wanted to do $1, but that's not happening in this scenario.
Why not?
Well, because I don't think that it's less than 8.2 million. I really don't. I just want to apologize to Paula ahead of time. Just don't be too hard on me. I think that's a lot of years, and I think at the beginning, I agree with OG. Dragons cost a lot, and I haven't watched past season 3, I think, but I've heard that there are lots of dragons, and they're big, much bigger than
a lot of money. Yeah.
Too. First you got to find them. Think about how long it would take to go on an expedition to actually find a dragon.
I think they have PR agents.
Yeah, I heard their contract negotiations are pretty. They're really good at that. That's Dragons.
Well, all their agents are unicorns. So there you go.
That's exactly. We're all unicorns, Joe. All
inside we are.
Inside.
Don't do that when I'm taking a drink. Almost all over my microphone.
Okay, I think it's higher than OG, and so I'm not gonna take the risk of going over because I won't win if I go over, right? So I'm going to say 19. You said 19 million, OG?
That is what I said, yes.
19 million and 1 penny.
Here comes the hammer.
I don't even get $1.
Wait, so you started at $1 and somehow you ended up at 19 million and a penny?
I was hoping the question would let me do $1 or that you guys would guess like so high that I could be like, oh, it's way lower than that. But I don't get to do my $1 that I've always dreamed of after listening to so many episodes.
I think it'll be great if it's like still 6 million.
7 million or something.
Be so
well, maybe
great.
They're really good at budgeting.
Well, let's see which one of you is right. Of course, we can't do that now. We have to make you wait for a second, so we'll be right back. Well, big thanks to Acre Trader for supporting Stacking Benjamins. You know, the reason that I like Acre Trader is as a kid growing up in the country, I worked in farms. And while you don't want to go into farming if you don't know anything about it, I think even if you're not from the farm, it's easy to get what I get, which is this. Farmers go out and lease land from property owners so that they can farm. As long as their rent check clears, the landlord then makes money. And because it's farmland and there's less of it all the time, in fact, statistics show that farmland is going away at an alarming rate, you then get a consistent income stream. However, because farmland is going away at such a quick rate, you also see that historically, farmland has been a much more boring investment than commercial real estate or residential real estate. And what I mean by boring is, historically, you've not seen nearly the price gyration that you've seen with those other types of real estate. Now, you need to be an accredited investor, and you certainly want to look that up ahead of time. You also need to know that your money is going into the ground. The way the Acre Trader makes this affordable for you and I is using some of the new investing rules that have happened over the past few years. Acre Trader subdivides the field and sells off little pieces of it instead of the entire field. So in the past, where people like you and I have not been able to invest in a full field, that's a lot of your net worth in one spot, you can now take a much smaller piece of your net worth and get started. So for an explainer video, more about how it works, head to acretrader.com/SB. That's acretrader.com/SB.
Hey there, Stackers, Northlanders, Lannisters, and Targaryens. I'm just reading the script. Before the break, I asked you how much each episode of Season 8 of Game of Thrones cost. Well, after you account for the fact that it costs money to give those dragons flying lessons, and, of course, there was that Starbucks unofficial sponsorship and all those caskets they must have had to buy for the killed-off characters, I'm sure you knew it was much bigger than the $6 million per episode of Season 1, not to mention the price tag of OG's bag stylist when he was an extra in one of the battles, allegedly. I swear, watch it in slow motion. The dragon scene at King's Landing in the next to last episode, he's the third soldier from the left, running for cover, screaming for his mommy. But okay, all right, okay. Enough stalling. I'll get to it. Here's your answer. In total, each episode was budgeted at $15 million. That's one heck of a lot of silver stags. I don't know what a podcast would do with CGI, but I'm going to go see if I can get Stacking Benjamins a piece of that pie. See ya!
Close.
I was really far away, but I think I won, right?
You won.
Yes!
And Beau, you Chelsea Brennan the wrong person.
The wrong one. It couldn't have been 20 million. That sounds reasonable too. Right?
It does. 20 million does sound reasonable. I thought when OG started thinking about it and said 19, I knew because I worked with our producer Caden on this one to get Doug the right thing, because you can't trust Doug to get it by himself. And OG, you were going, I'm going to guess. And I thought you were going to say 15 million. And I was like, oh, if he landed right on it. But
I feel pretty close, actually. 19 versus 15. I feel pretty good about it. Unfortunately, it doesn't count for anything. So,
well, so Beau, when you see Paula at FinCon, I would stay away from this topic. That's all I'd do.
Yes.
And if
it's something distracting.
Yeah. And Katie, if you see Len Penzo, you guys are now BFFs. So there you go.
Len, I like chai lattes with almond milk in case you would like to buy me one.
There it is. Hey guys,
what does Paula like? I'd like to buy her.
you got to. What does? Oh, the hot dog. Remember, OG? She likes that one hot dog that she gets down in the corner at Vegas. Remember, with all the stuff on it, like the horrible. She eats a hot dog the horrible way, almost like if you had a pickle on it. Just disgusting.
So you could buy Paula a Las Vegas strip hot dog.
Yes, do that, Beau.
This is not helpful. Not helpful.
Hey guys, let's take out the.
Go up to Paula and go, I don't know you and you don't know me, but I got you a hot dog. I just want to see that. I want to videotape that.
That's the open. Hey,
what's happening now?
Let's take out the magnifying glass and help somebody do better with their money. Today's hotline call comes to you courtesy of magnifymoney.com. Because when you go to stackybenjamins.com/magnify money, you know what you find, Katie?
What do you find?
You find that those financial products people use every day because they go to a brick and mortar bank and that's it. They're nowhere near the best in class. In fact, over 92% of the products available online, they're all ranked at magnifymoney.com. Head to stackybenjamins.com/magnify money for more. And today we're going to do a big favor and help Christopher magnify his money. Say hi, Christopher.
Hi, this is Chris from Virginia. Even though I'm probably not going to learn anything, I'm going to ask the question anyway. But before I ask, I do want to say I appreciate all you do for people on helping them stack some Benjamins. Well, my question is around software. I'm really interested in retirement withdrawal software. And it seems like every time I do a search for that, the only thing I get is, will you have enough in retirement? I feel like I'm going to be fine there, but I do have taxable accounts. I have Roth accounts, 401k, and I just want to make sure that strategically I withdraw down the most tax efficient way. So thanks a lot. Hopefully you're enjoying something good down in your mom's basement, and I appreciate what you do.
Hey, thanks for the kind words, Chris. I appreciate it. And it is interesting. A lot of the software out there is made for like wealth accumulation, but taking money out most efficiently. That's the thing I remember when I was a financial planner I had, but man, Beau, do you know, is there anything that you know of that's about withdrawing money most efficiently, even if it is, written in Canadian?
Well, that's the thing. Anything that I say is not going to be helpful to Chris. Because,
well, actually, maybe it will be, because I know some of these software programs, like even the ones I used to use, you can fill in the blanks.
You can switch.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking about government benefits being included in all these calculations, and they're very different, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I always tell someone, at FinCon, if they say, try my retirement calculator. I'm like, well, you don't have my pension plan and my old age security in there. So, well, I would leave this personally. Okay, so you can either go to a planner, which is what I would recommend to anyone who is looking to do anything tax efficiently. So, find one. But you can also buy in Canada, you can buy a month of financial planning software. I used to use it, $70 a month. Pay for 1 month, do your own, type in your numbers. It'll do all the calculations for you.
Oh, that's a
you
good
might
idea.
have something like that in the States.
Yeah.
Because it's expensive to have the subscription. It's made for planners, right? But buy 1 month, do your thing. It'll set you up for a bit. If you need to do it again in the future, you can pay for another month, maybe. It's not a lot of money considering you probably, let's say you have $500,000 or $1 million that you're looking at anyway. So that's what I would do.
Our Canadian listeners are screaming at their device right now if I don't ask you the next question, which is, what's the name of the software for our Canadian listeners, the one that you like? What's the name of it?
Oh, I wasn't going to plug them, but I did use, it's called Snap Projections. I think it's pretty good. It was really like not the ones where you do all the, like, what if I want to buy a house when I'm 77 and you put that in there? Like, there's probably that, but like not too complicated and not too simple. And I think it fits right in the middle. Perfect for someone who doesn't know, like who's not a planner to use, I would say. Snapprojections.com.
Yeah. Now we'll go to the planners. You guys know any off-the-shelf software? Katie, any off-the-shelf software that might be helpful for Chris?
I find a lot of times that whoever the 401k provider is actually has the most easy to use tools, but that's very, very dependent on who your company uses for their 401k and whether that 401k company has actually put a bunch of time and effort into those tools. So I've seen a really wide variation between where some clients just have a slider that says you aren't saving enough. And that's probably not what this particular.
It's like 2 thumbs up. You're good. It's like, that's like reassuring.
Or a sad face.
Yeah.
And then I've seen ones where it kind of defaults to certain variables that you would put in, but you could really dive in there and look at different what if scenarios. Unfortunately, it really depends on who you end up with as your 401k provider. I've actually had some clients ask me if they should use financial planning software. And I'm like, man, it took me at least 5 years probably of being in full-time financial planning before I actually knew how to put stuff in so that anything that made sense would come back out of it. I don't know. I just kind of go on the side of, if that was my full-time job and I had already gone through CFP education, I'm not sure I would encourage somebody to go try to buy a financial planning software package if it's not one that's actually more tweaked for individual usage.
OG, any ideas?
No, none at all. I don't think that I could say it any better than Katie did. There's a lot of public tools out there, depending on where your money is presently, that can help with this. But it also, I guess I was thinking about it from the perspective of like, well, how complicated is it to think about? And I get that probably what he wants to do is model this out for like decades in advance. But the reality is that, I mean, under the current law, the tax situation that we have right now is only good for the next 6.5 years anyway. So whatever you model out is likely going to be different or broken or changed or, whatever anyway. So why not just take it kind of like on a 2 or 3 year time horizon and say, okay, I want to maximize the low bracket as much as possible out of my qualified plans. That takes me up to X dollars. So my first X dollars, I'm going to take out of my IRA. Then I'm going to take my next dollars out of my brokerage account, or whatever, like however it works best for him. People nowadays are trying to manipulate the data for reporting requirements as it relates to their healthcare costs, especially if they're in that kind of period of time between retirement and when Medicare kicks in at 65. So that has a secondary factor, and sometimes even it's a primary factor as it relates to where that money is going to come out of and how you're going to, quote, live for the first few years of retirement anyway. Because it's like, well, I don't want to take too much money because if I do, I'm going to have to pay 20 grand in insurance premiums. So I'll just be broke for the next 2 years and save myself 20 grand type of deal. So I think you take it more of a case by case basis, year to year, maybe kind of this year and next year and maybe the year after is kind of how you start thinking about it. But I'm with Katie. You can go buy a subscription to Navaplan or Money Guide Pro or eMoney, all the tools that advisors use. But good luck trying to make it work correctly. I just don't know that I would risk that. I think the other alternative, Beau, you might have even said this as it relates to just finding an advisor. There's different types of planners out there too. There's people out there who double check your math for a flat fee. And then there's people who manage your entire portfolio for money also, and everywhere in between. Maybe the right thing is to do is just to hire somebody for a few hours of work and pay a few $1,000s, depending on how complicated it is.
The same kind of thing Beau recommended at the beginning. Just
that's my first choice. Like if you really want to do it yourself, you might be able to find something in Canada that's easy-ish. But I totally hear what you're saying. You guys have the healthcare component that I don't even understand that you have to factor in.
We don't understand it either. That's the great part. It's fantastic. It's all make believe. It's just money into a drain. That's all you.
I just show up at the hospital.
Yeah,
and they
but
say,
we do too. But then they send us a bill for $42,000. You go, I thought I had insurance. We're like, yeah, it doesn't cover that. Like, it doesn't cover a broken arm.
No, I'm sorry. But if you would have broken your clavicle,
it does cover it, but you have to spend the first $20,000 out of pocket.
Right.
And that's only for that part of it. It's crazy. Anyways.
Katie, you're raising your hand.
Me. Well, actually, I combed through a bunch of different resources, and I will say, if you tried to actually look at retirement withdrawal strategies, you will get about 100 different websites trying to sell you stuff. But then there is one that I thought of that I actually like. It's myretirementpaycheck.org. It's actually through the National Endowment for Financial Education. They're a complete nonprofit, and they are actually one that like the Financial Planning Association affiliates with, especially for educational resources. So they actually have quite a few very informational. They're not trying to push you towards an investment company or towards an annuity or anything else. It's more on a what you need to know basis. I think they've got some calculators on there, but they're pretty light. But at least they can kind of give you food for thought on when you might want to take out of your Roth IRA versus your taxable assets. And if you've got like an overabundance of money where you think you're going to have money left over, where you might want to park that and be able to take out of those different buckets.
I have a couple more that I'll throw on top to just make sure that Chris has complete analysis paralysis before this is over.
He's going to be so excited.
So frozen he can't do anything. If you look up the website, Can I Retire Yet? My friend Darrow Kirkpatrick and his and actually Chris Mamula is going to not only be coming up on the show, but he's also on his way to Detroit here in early October. But Chris and Darrow, this site, Can I Retire Yet? They have a retirement calculator, kind of a whole spreadsheet that shows a bunch of different ones, and they evaluate all the different ones for whatever you want. A guy that we've had on the show also is Jason Parker. He has Sound Retirement Planning, and he has a great calculator that we're actually an affiliate with. So this is why I want to mention this one last. His deal is if you use Benjamin's in the coupon code, you end up getting half price. And by the way, he is consistently updating that calculator. I think he's updated it twice since the first time we talked about it about 6 months ago. So that's retirementbudgetcalculator.com, and use the code Benjamins and you'll get half price on that. Plus all the add-ons later you'll get free. So now we've given him 57 resources. So Chris,
good luck.
There you go.
Go get him, Tiger.
Yeah, thanks for the question. You got a question for our roundtable? Head to stackingbenjamins.com/voicemail. And like Chris, we're going to send Chris a Greatest Money Show on Earth circus t-shirt just for being brave enough to ask us a question. So that's going to do it for today, guys. Let's go ladies first. Katie, what the heck is going on at Your Richest Life Planning right now?
Well, I mentioned earlier, we're kind of revving up for the fall for employee benefit season. So I'm just kind of getting people excited as much as you could excite clients about getting a whole bunch of paperwork and decisions that they have to make. But I always feel like that's the time of year when we might have opportunities to be able to do things that you can only do through an employer. Or if you're self-employed, it could be a time where you actually set up things for the next year. So for example, if somebody doesn't have a SEP or they don't have a solo 401k, waiting until the middle of December is probably not the best thing. So thinking about it coming up to the end of the year can be really helpful for being able to put it in place either for the rest of this year or starting next year.
And we'll link to Your Richest Life Planning on our show notes page, but how do people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter. It's Katie, KATIEYRL, short for Your Richest Life, or yourrichestlifeplanning.com. Or if you're too lazy to type all that out, you can just do YRLplanning.com, because I spent the extra $5 to get that.
You're welcome. You're welcome,
You're so
everybody.
welcome.
That redirect is all yours.
That's why everybody gets a $5 surcharge on their fee with, no, I'm kidding.
Right. They're supplementing the $5 that I spent for that extra URL.
That's right. Yeah. Beau, it's about time we got you here, man.
Yeah, I started listening to the Stacking Benjamin show when I was driving from Canada down to Orlando last year.
That is crazy that you would and you didn't fall asleep. That's a good thing.
Well, no, yeah, I don't think I did. Yeah, would I remember? I don't know. I'm driving to DC this year too, a little shorter.
Nice.
Wow.
Yeah, but still, you're driving. How many hours is that? 10?
It'll be 8 in a bit to get to DC. I'm leaving from Windsor. I'll be very nearby.
You'll be
dropping the baby and the wife off at the parents.
Now, does time work the same in Canada, or do you guys is it like on Mars, where there's like a difference?
Time is it's a little bit colder, so
it's like
just everything.
It's like temperature. It's like just
a
weird calculation.
Well, our time is in Celsius, so
that's exactly right.
100 is boiling.
It's not like military time, just to confuse the heck out of them.
You only have 20.
That's right.
You have 20 hours a week, a day.
Military time is in Quebec. There you go. So
there it is.
If you'll find it there. But yeah, so I'm going to do 100 episodes by the time actually at FinCon. It'll be my 100th episode.
Oh, that's so
I'm
awesome.
going to be recording it there on stage. With some special guests, so that'll be great.
That's a fantastic milestone, and just so people know that are listening, the average podcast goes 7 episodes. So
yeah, right.
Whenever somebody reaches 100, you're like, that is so unbelievable.
15 times better than average.
Yes. Oh, that's amazing. So tell us what's coming up on the show, though. What do you got coming up on the Personal Finance Show?
Yeah, so other than that, the 100th show, which I haven't recorded yet, I got Aaron Lowry on, which you've had on.
Broke Millennial, yes.
Broke Millennial. And Bridget Casey is coming up this week. She's Money After Graduation. It's a big site in Canada. And I think in North America as well.
I follow her on Instagram. She's always entertaining.
Yeah. Bridget is, she's very well educated when it comes to money, and she has great YouTube videos too. And, we just talked about her story, which is very interesting. She almost was a doctor. So,
oh, that's funny.
Like very close to becoming a doctor. So it's funny how we pivot, right? And that's why I like telling stories.
Yes.
There's pivots all over the place. And sometimes they're really interesting and they're very enabling. You can pivot too, right? Don't be stuck. Right?
That's my favorite part whenever I read about businesses or hear about somebody's career is where's that turn? Like, where did it finally turn around for you? And most entrepreneurs and most just successful people in general can tell you like exactly where they were when they're like, you know what, it's got to change. And then everything went from there.
Mm-hmm.
Good stuff.
I thought you just decided to be a business owner and then it just all works out.
Well, yeah, then it magically works. That's every business owner listening knows that. I mean,
that's what the internet told me.
That's right. Yes. Exactly. It's all easy. Yeah. The idea of passive income, right? That's going to do it for today. Well, OG, I didn't ask you.
I was going to say, no, I'm good. I don't have anything going on apparently.
Well, let me guess. You're flying planes. You're doing your after school activities. You're hanging out with the kids.
Okay, fine. Carry on.
That's going to do it for today then.
Tell when I'm not wanted.
Everybody, thanks for listening. And Doug, you've got it from here, man. What should we have learned today?
So, what should we have learned today? Well, first, joy is subjective, but the solution is simple. Spend more time doing the things you enjoy. Get outside of the fog of work every once in a while. Don't think you can do that? Well, you know what? It's probably time, like the roundtable did today, to get creative. Second, take some advice from Joel Gurman. It's the fees and interest rate that matter on a loan. Don't look at only half the expenses. But the big lesson? Hodor, 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 Hodor. No, I'm not explaining it. If you have to have me do that, you ruin the bit, OG. Thanks to Joel Gurman from Quicken Loans for stopping by the basement. Find out more at quickenloans.com. Special thanks to Beau Humphreys for stopping by to chat money. You can find his podcast at beauhumphreys.com. Thanks to Katie Brewer for coming down to the basement. You can find her at yourrichestlifeplanning.com. You can also find the link to their shows on our show notes page at stackingbenjamins.com. This show was created by Joe Salsihai, produced by Richie Rutter-Reese, and engineered by the amazing Steve Stewart. Online, visit us on Twitter at @SBenjaminsCast or on our Facebook page. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug, and I really thought doing these credits completely naked would have been a lot more fun than it actually was. SB Podcasts may receive payment on the show from sponsors and guests in the form of books, giveaway items, discounts, or other remuneration. There's no way you would take advice from these dorks, but like Joe's mom always says, don't take advice from people you don't know. This show is for entertainment purposes only, and before making any financial moves, consult with a real financial advisor. And finally, thanks to Mom for not killing off a character. But watch out, OG! Winter is coming.
Talked about Game of Thrones today. Did any of you guys watch Game of Thrones?
You already asked that, but no.
Well, I asked you that.
No.
Okay.
And he said he's watched the first 3 seasons.
Yeah, I think after the Red Wedding, I just kind of shut everything down.
Katie, you watch it?
The most sci-fi I think I can go is Stranger Things.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, so good.
And I love it, but I actually have a rule that can't be the last thing that I see because I have nightmares.
Oh, yeah.
So I've made all these rules upon seeing Stranger Things that if we do it, then we have to leave enough time for me to watch some stupid mindless something after that so that I don't have creepy nightmares.
Which means you're on episode 3.
Yeah, I think of the most recent season. Yes.
Oh, you made it that far. Nice job.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, with that kind of science fiction stuff on the table, I was just thinking about nerdism and nerdery, and we're all money nerds, but it's funny because things like Game of Thrones have made it kind of cool to be even more of a nerd, right? Where
I didn't realize it was so dark in here.
Well, I'm glad you had to tell us that you were turning up the light, because on an audio podcast, stopping the podcast to tell everybody you're turning on the. Thank you.
It's like way better now.
Makes
Good
it
night.
Way better. Yes.
OG would like to announce that he looks way better on camera on this podcast.
Yes.
Gotta be honest.
Now people can imagine him looking just phenomenal because he turned.
Thank you for the
light up.
compliment, Katie. That was very nice of you to say.
But anyway, can we finish this? Is that okay with you?
Nobody watches this silly show.
I listen to this after show.
No, I'm not talking about that. Everybody listens to that, dude. Come on. I'm talking about Game of Thrones.
He's talking about Game of Thrones.
This show.
On, he's like, nobody listens to our show.
But at least 6 people do that. I know.
But if somebody, back to your point about the Red Wedding before I asked that. But when you were talking about the Red Wedding, Beau, I was reading in bed and I took the book, and Cheryl's reading something else, and I literally took the book and I chucked it across the room. She's like, "What's going on?" I'm like, "Yeah, I hate this book." And then
Curse you, George R.R. Martin.
And then I went and I finished the rest of them, but I couldn't. When it came on TV, then I'm like, I can't watch this. I cannot go through this again. Like emotionally, I can't do it. But nerdery. So what type of nerdery things do you guys like besides money?
So I got lots. I'll pick a pretty nerdy one, I think. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the series, has a musical episode. It's actually, I really like the musical. I'm a musician, right? So, Buffy, I like watching this whole series. The musical episode, I found the sheet music. I'm a piano player, right? And I learned how to play all the songs. There's like full score written out, right? Full score. And then all of our friends who are like huge Buffy maniacs, they were assigned roles, and we redid the musical in our living room.
You redid the entire musical.
We had a friend of ours actually was the narrator reading the script where there wasn't singing, and then everyone was assigned a role. I was the piano player, plus I played one of the characters as well.
Did you film it and send it to Joss Whedon?
No, but our Buffy was the hugest fan. She actually got to meet him, I believe, at a fan expo of some kind, and she knew every lyric of the Buffy songs inside out. And we have a bunch of singers in the group, so that was really nice. I'd love to do it again. I'd love to read.
That is super cool.
Very nerdy.
That's incredibly nerdy, but way cool.
So can we have like a get together at some conference that we might be at where we like sing money songs? Because I would totally be down for this.
I already asked Jessica if there's a piano in DC for FinCon, and she said no.
Oh,
and it's really hard to find a piano in DC that you can just go and play. You got to either just go and do an open mic, or it's just, I've already looked into it. But yes, let's do that in the future.
How fun would that be? A bunch of money nerds singing a bunch of money songs. There it is. OG looks thrilled. Like, yes, you'd be the first one. I know you well enough, dude. You'd have a couple Woodfords. You'd be up there singing Pink Floyd. No?
I don't think that would be true.
No?
Money!
Yeah.
Yes. Katie, you're a financial planner. Your husband, you said, is an engineer. There must be some nerdy stuff that you guys have done.
No, not at all.
No.
I'm just kidding. Well, we're money nerds. We're numbers nerds. I mean, really, it's just inconvenient that we can't make any decision without a spreadsheet, and usually overlapping spreadsheets, because we have to have his and her spreadsheets and then compare them.
Get it on the 11 by 14 legal size.
Exactly.
Like the fold.
Exactly. So other than that, other than not being able to make any decisions without his and her spreadsheets, we're also a very musical family. So I don't know if it's nerdy or not, but pretty much we all know the lyrics to every Disney, anything that's got.
Oh, yeah.
And we also have like sing-alongs with our family. My husband plays guitar. My daughter plays whatever instrument you hand her, which is usually like a maraca or something that doesn't take a whole lot of musical ability. And then she sings, I sing. My sister just moved to Colorado, but back when she was in the Dallas area, she would also join us in these, random family musical performances.
We used to have about a 3-hour drive to go to my parents' house. When we go there for the holidays, I really didn't want to stop 15 times. And my kids were always good about every 30 minutes of totally wanting to stop and do something. So it would take all flipping afternoon to get to my parents' house. And so I decided that we're not a very musical family, but what that reminded me of, Katie, was I decided we were going to do this show with Christmas carols, but I was only creating it so that my kids were in the zone the entire time we were driving there.
So you were trying to trick them into not bugging you every 30 minutes.
And so we created these different 3-part things for all the different songs, and it worked. It totally worked. We got there in 3 hours. My kids were all fired up about performing it in front of everybody. Then we performed the songs. And of course, grandma and grandpa and aunts and uncles and everybody thought it was so cool that they did that. But definitely not learning an entire Buffy the Vampire Slayer. But I kept my kids quiet for 3 hours. How nerdy is that? That's awesome.
That's so old school, man.
It was just
pretty good.
Like, you got to be a ninja after a while. You're like,
and it was practical.
Stay one step ahead of the kids. Bigger nerdery than that for me was my cousin and my brother and I had a pact that we wouldn't let anybody know that we would play Dungeons and Dragons all the time. We totally would play, but we had a pact. You couldn't tell anybody, because while those Stranger Thing kids, it's like really cool to do it. Man, in the 80s, that was not nearly the cool badge of honor I think it is today. So for a certain nerd kid, I think being a nerd's way cooler than it was then. But we loved Dungeons and Dragons. OG, how about you? You're a big Dungeons and Dragons guy.
I can't relate to any of this, actually.
You don't have a nerd bone in you, do you? Come on.
I don't think so.
You've always been like 85 years old.
Yeah. Just, it's almost bedtime, man. What are you going to do? There's time for bed and time for play. Bedtime's at 9:30. Everybody knows that.
Were you like born a diva? Was that it?
I totally am. Yeah. So no, I don't have any, I can't think of any. I mean, nothing similar to what you guys are talking about.
So sad. Come on.
Oh, wow. Sounds a little elitist.
I know. Whatever.
No. Sorry, I don't do anything silly like you guys.
What about puzzles? Would you do a puzzle?
No, I'm a 2 on implementer on Colby, so I'm not a puzzle person.
But you play some board games. You and I have played some board games.
Not on purpose.
Play board games on purpose?
I was trying to be friends with you.
Trying to find some common ground.
I'm just trying to square peg in the round hole. I'm just like trying to.
By playing Ticket to Ride. Your kids like Ticket to Ride.
They do. And I'm glad that I taught them how to play so that I don't have to play it ever again.